She returned to her family's abandoned motel, hoping to sell it and move on. But when she unlocked one sealed door, she uncovered the chilling truth about a missing guest who had checked in and never checked out. What she discovered inside that abandoned motel shocked the entire town and brought a decades-old secret back to life. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments, would you ever stay in a motel with one room permanently locked? Let's get started. The first time Amelia Brooks stepped back onto the cracked parking lot of the old motel, the air hit her like a memory she hadn't asked for. It had been nearly 15 years. The Silver Pines Motel sat off a forgotten stretch of highway in Cedar Junction, Wyoming, where no one really stopped anymore unless their car broke down or their past dragged them back. Her father had run the place before it fell apart, before the bookings stopped, before the neon sign buzzed its last blue hum. It used to be full of life. Road trippers, truckers, tourists with loud kids. She remembered falling asleep to the sound of car doors slamming and keychains jangling. But now, the motel was quiet. Dust hung in the morning light. Ivy climbed the faded siding. The vacancy sign dangled half-broken, a piece of it tapping gently in the breeze like a dying heartbeat. She didn't come here to relive the past. She came because her father was gone now, and the place was hers. The plan was simple: clean it up, sell it, and leave. But that was before she found the key to room 9. A room that shouldn't have existed. A room no one had ever checked out from. Amelia spent the first 2 days cleaning. Most of the furniture was unusable. The lobby smelled like mildew and old smoke, and the hallway lights flickered like they'd been stuck mid-blink for a decade. She found old receipts, faded postcards, and empty vending machines with stickers peeling like sunburnt skin. The motel had 12 rooms. That's what her dad always said. 12 keys, 12 stories. But as she was sweeping behind the old check-in counter, something strange caught her eye. A hook, bare, dustless, like a key had once hung there and had only recently been removed. She checked the ledger, thick with years of scrawled names and timestamps, room 1 through 12. But in her father's handwriting, faint and tucked between pages, there was a line written in pencil. Room 9, do not rent, do not open. Her brows furrowed. Room 9. That didn't make sense. She searched the key drawer again. Underneath a pile of old paperclips and broken pens, she found it a brass tag shaped like a teardrop, dulled with time. She felt a chill that didn't come from the air. Amelia looked out across the cracked courtyard toward the long stretch of identical doors. She counted them. 12. Except there was a space between room 8 and room 10 that had always seemed just slightly off. A longer strip of wall, a gutter that dipped unnaturally, a vent that never blew air, and a small, warped door with no number on it. Her pulse quickened. She walked across the courtyard slowly, each step crunching over broken gravel and cigarette butts left behind by ghosts. At the door, her fingers trembled as she slid the key in. It turned with a soft, almost reluctant click. The door creaked open. Inside, the room was still. Too still. The air was thick with the kind of quiet that presses against your skin like fog. Dust floated in the sunbeam, cutting through the torn blinds, and everything was untouched. The bed was made. The TV remote sat neatly on the dresser. There was a jacket hanging on the back of the chair, and on the nightstand a styrofoam cup with dried coffee clinging to the rim. Someone had been here, but not recently. Or maybe they'd never left. Amelia didn't step inside at first. She stood in the doorway, breathing shallow, taking it all in. Then she saw it, something that stopped her cold. On the writing desk, beneath a thin layer of dust, was a check-in slip. Guest name: Daniel Whitaker. Date: October 4th, 1997. Room under a 9. Checkout blank. Her hands began to shake. Daniel Whitaker? That name... That wasn't just any guest. That was the man who disappeared. She remembered the news reports. She'd only been a kid. He was a local accountant who vanished overnight. Car still in the lot, no trace. They'd questioned her dad. He'd told police the man must have left without a word, walked off into the Wyoming wilderness. But now she was staring at the room he'd never left. She stepped inside, slowly, like walking into a memory that didn't belong to her. The closet held 2 shirts, still neatly hung. A duffel bag sat in the corner, zipped. When she opened it, she found notebooks, receipts, and an envelope with "Confidential" stamped across it in red. Her heart pounded. She turned toward the bathroom. The mirror was cracked, but there, written faintly in the foggy glass, still visible even after all these years, were 3 words. Don't trust him. Amelia staggered back. Her mind raced. Who was him, her father, someone else? She suddenly needed air, needed space. But as she turned to leave the room, something caught her eye beneath the bed. A small cassette recorder. She picked it up, hit play. At first, just static. Then a voice. A man's voice. Calm, nervous, trembling. If you're hearing this, my name is Daniel Whitaker. I never left. I wanted to. I tried to. But he said it wasn't safe. He said I knew too much. About the funds. About the deal. He's going to make sure I disappear. But if someone finds this, please, tell the truth. Tell them it wasn't an accident. Tell them I was here. The tape clicked off. Amelia sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, eyes wide. She had come here to sell this place, to erase it from her life like a stain on a tablecloth she never picked. But now, she was holding a ghost in her hands. A voice from the past begging to be heard, begging not to be erased. Her father had lied, or worse, helped make someone disappear. And she had a choice. Leave the room. Lock the door. Sell the motel. Forget. Or listen. She sat there in the dust for a long time, until the sun dipped behind the hills, until the shadows grew longer, until the silence turned soft again, not threatening, but aching. She looked around room 9 once more. Then she whispered, barely audible, I hear you. And in that moment, the motel forgotten, broken, buried under time seemed to exhale, not with relief, but with recognition. Because someone finally came back, and someone finally listened. The next morning, Amelia woke on the couch in the front office. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. The tape recorder from room 9 still lay on the desk beside her, its plastic casing dull in the gray morning light. The motel was quiet, but it was never truly silent anymore. Now that she'd heard his voice, she couldn't pretend she hadn't. She poured herself instant coffee from a thermos she brought with her, trying to ground herself in the present. But her thoughts kept drifting. Daniel Whitaker never checked out. He left behind a voice, a warning, and a room sealed by guilt. And whoever he was afraid of, it might not be just a memory. She couldn't ignore the bag, the duffel from under the bed. She hadn't opened it completely the day before, too shaken. But now, as she unzipped it fully, the contents made her stomach tighten. Inside were dozens of papers, many with city government stamps. Budget reports, signed authorizations, names she didn't recognize at first, until she saw the signature at the bottom of one page. Charles Brooks, her father. She dug deeper. There were folders marked Proposed Highway Development 1996, along with maps and payout records, documents implicating local officials in a shady land deal, a major construction project that was quietly canceled after rumors of embezzlement surfaced. But no one had ever proven anything. Until now, Daniel hadn't just been an ordinary motel guest. He was a whistleblower. And this room 9 wasn't just where he'd disappeared. It was where he'd been hidden. Suddenly, Amelia's phone buzzed. She jumped! 1 bar of signal, just enough to receive a voicemail notification. She played it. Amelia, it's Uncle Jim. Listen, I heard from someone in town you were back at the motel. I know you probably have questions about your dad. I don't think I can answer them all. But please, if you found something, don't go looking too hard. Just call me. She replayed the message twice. The tone in his voice wasn't casual. It was worried. No afraid? She hadn't spoken to Uncle Jim since the funeral. He was her father's younger brother, helped him run the motel in the 90s, always the quiet one, always kept out of family business. But now it sounded like he knew. That night, the wind picked up. It howled through the cracked siding and whistled under the doors. Amelia sat in the motel lobby, staring at a manila folder filled with evidence. Her fingers grazed the edge of a black and white photo tucked inside, one showing her father shaking hands with a city councilman in front of a bulldozer. The caption read, Highway 39 groundbreaking, October 1997. The same week Daniel Whitaker disappeared. At exactly 11:42 p.m., the motion light outside room 9 flicked on. She hadn't told anyone she was here. No one should be outside. Her heart leapt. She grabbed a flashlight and stepped carefully into the courtyard, boots crunching on the frost-bitten gravel. The light above room 9 buzzed softly, casting a pool of yellow on the door. But no one was there. Just the wind and silence. She turned to go. Then she noticed it. A paper, tucked neatly under the doorframe. She picked it up. The edges were damp. The ink was faded, but legible. If you open this up again, they'll come looking for you too. There was no signature. Amelia locked the front office that night. She sat in the corner with the tape recorder in her lap, and the cassette Daniel had left loaded. She pressed play again. His voice felt closer this time. If I disappear, they'll blame the road. They'll say I drove off, got lost, wandered into the mountains. But I'm not gone. I'm in room 9. And if you're hearing this, tell my wife I never stopped trying to protect her. And tell the truth. Even if it burns everything down. She couldn't sleep. Not after that. Not when someone, maybe the same people who silenced Daniel, was still watching. Not when her own father's name was tied to the cover-up. She kept staring at the door. Room 9 now unlocked, opened, awake. And she knew then. She had a choice. Walk away. Pretend this motel was nothing more than rotting wood and fading memories. Or finish what Daniel started. By sunrise, she was on her way into town. She drove straight to the local paper's office, the Cedar Junction Gazette. An old building with yellowing blinds and a sign that hadn't been repainted since the 80s. A man named Ron Mathers greeted her. Editor-in-chief, white beard, kind eyes. She handed him the folder. He skimmed it slowly, quietly, until he reached the photo. He looked up. Where'd you get this? Room 9, she replied. He leaned back in his chair. I knew your father. Everyone did. He wasn't a bad man, but he got in too deep. The land deal. The city money, it went higher than just Cedar Junction. The Whitaker case got buried because someone made sure it did. He looked her in the eye. You sure you want to do this? Amelia, it won't make you many friends. Might even make you enemies. She nodded. He was in there for 26 years. It's time someone let him out. That night, she returned to the motel. As she crossed the courtyard, the wind was calmer. The air was still cold, but different. The kind of cold that comes after a storm. the kind that lets things settle. She stood outside room 9 and whispered. I told them. The light above her flickered once, then steadied. Inside the room, nothing had changed. But it didn't feel the same. For the first time, room 9 didn't feel like a grave. It felt like a story, finally heard. A few days after Amelia handed over the documents to the local paper, the first article was published. The motel room that was never checked out, and the truth it held. The story spread quietly at first, then picked up momentum. People from neighboring counties began to remember the 1997 disappearance. A few even came by the old Silver Pines Motel, parking their cars just outside the gate. They didn't knock. They didn't ask questions. They just stood there, facing room 9, and left just as silently. Amelia watched from the front office window. They didn't need to come inside. Their presence said enough someone remembered, and for the first time, so did the world. That night, Amelia opened a metal tin her father had kept hidden beneath the check-in desk. She'd seen it years ago, but had never dared to look inside. Now, she had to. Inside weren't cash or keys, but a bundle of unsent letters, all addressed to one name, Lena Whitaker, Daniel's wife. I wanted to tell you, God knows I wanted to. But if I opened my mouth, I would have lost everything. I wasn't the man who hurt him, but I knew who did. And if silence is a crime, I've been guilty every day since. Her hands shook as she read her father's words. He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't cruel either. He had lived the rest of his life inside a prison of his own making, not behind bars, but inside a locked room of regret. That night, Amelia returned to room 9. This time, not with fear, but understanding. She sat on the edge of the bed, turned on the repaired tape recorder, and spoke into it softly like she was talking to someone sitting right there beside her. Daniel, I can't change what happened. I can't turn back time. But I told them. I told them everything. Your name is out there now. The truth is out there. This room is no longer a grave. It's a place of remembrance. She placed the new tape gently into the drawer, like a closing chapter that finally had a voice. The next morning, she did something she hadn't done since the day she returned. She wrote, not just notes or lists of things to fix, but her story. Amelia sat at the dusty front desk, opened a blank journal, and wrote the first line. This place held ghosts, not the kind that haunt, the kind that wait, the kind that whisper, tell them I was here. And the words just came. Not only Daniel's truth, but hers too. The story of a daughter who thought she was just cleaning up a forgotten property, but ended up discovering a legacy that had been silenced. That afternoon, a car pulled up to the gate. An older woman stepped out, small frame, silver hair, hands folded at her waist. Her eyes carried the weight of decades. Amelia stepped outside. Can I help you? The woman didn't speak at first. Instead, she handed Amelia a worn photograph. Daniel, Lena, a little boy, all smiling beneath the old motel sign. Silver Pines, free coffee and cable. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. You're Lena. The woman nodded gently. I read the article. They stood in silence for a moment, the wind passing softly between them. Was he in pain? Lena asked, her voice trembling. Amelia shook her head, voice thick. No, just alone, but not anymore. Together, they walked to room 9. Amelia stepped aside and let Lena go in alone. She moved slowly, running her fingers along the old jacket still hanging on the chair. She sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't cry. She closed her eyes and whispered something only that room could hear. Thank you. Amelia never opened room 9 again after that day. Not because she feared it, because she didn't need to. It wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a memorial. And as she painted the porch, fixed up the lobby, reopened the coffee corner her mother once ran, Amelia realized something powerful. She didn't want to leave this place. She wasn't just someone trying to escape a shadow. She was the light that was supposed to shine through it. On the morning she officially reopened the Silver Pines Motel, she hung a handmade sign outside room 9. It didn't list a rate, or availability, or hours. Just a single line. This room is not for staying. It's for remembering. The motel reopened on a Sunday. Not with a grand ribbon cutting or press releases. There were no balloons, no speeches. Just a handwritten sign in the window that read, "Now open, come sit a while." It was enough. By noon, 3 cars had pulled in. Not customers. Really not yet. Just people. Curious, quiet, grateful. One of them was a man in his 70s who'd stayed there in 1986 with his late wife. He walked slowly through the lot, ran his hand along the faded bricks, and whispered, "Didn't think I'd ever see this place again." Amelia offered him a cup of coffee, the kind her mom used to make with a pinch of cinnamon. He sat on the porch for over an hour, alone, smiling. And when he left, he turned to her and said, "You didn't just fix this place, you brought it home again." It wasn't long before the phone started ringing. Writers, podcasters, a few documentary filmmakers. They all wanted a piece of the story, the hidden room, the missing man, the daughter who uncovered the truth her father tried to bury. But Amelia turned most of them down. She wasn't trying to sell a mystery. She was preserving a memory. There was one exception, a local history museum that asked if they could create an exhibit, The Room That Remembered. They promised it would be done with care, with dignity. She said yes. Not because she needed the attention, but because she knew Daniel's story didn't belong in silence anymore. And then came the letters. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Some handwritten, some typed, many anonymous. They came from everywhere: Arizona, Oregon, even as far as Nova Scotia. People who had heard about Room 9 and felt something shift inside themselves. A woman wrote, "I never told anyone what happened to me when I was 16, but when I read what you did, I told my husband. And for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed." A man wrote, "I was told to be quiet for 40 years. Thank you for reminding me that truth doesn't die. It just waits for someone like you." Amelia kept every letter. She stored them in the same box where her father once hid his guilt. Now it held something different. Testimonies, healing, truth. The motel didn't become a luxury destination. That was never the plan. But word spread. Writers started booking Room 2, saying the energy helped them finish things they'd put off for years. A traveling nurse spent 3 days in Room 5, then left a note that read, "I didn't know how much I needed quiet until this place gave it to me." And then there was Room 9. She never rented it out, but she opened it. One afternoon a week, visitors could walk in, sit on the edge of the bed, look at the worn wallpaper, listen to the faint static hum of the repaired recorder. She placed a guest book in the corner. Not for names, but for messages. "You're remembered. I heard you. We see you now." Some people just left tears. One day, a man in a gray coat stood at the front desk. He didn't say much, just looked around the room and said, "You, Amelia." She nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cassette. Worn, unlabeled. "I used to work in the city records department," he said. "Back then, people like me were told what to destroy. I didn't. I kept this. For when someone finally gave a damn..." He placed it in her hand. "Now it's yours." Then he walked out. She never saw him again. That night, she played the tape. It was a conversation muffled but clear. 2 men, one of them was her father, the other a city official. They spoke in hushed voices about payouts, about Daniel, about how it'd be easier if he just disappeared. Amelia's hands shook. She already knew most of this, but hearing it, it was like watching a scar be reopened not to hurt, but to finally clean it. She sent a copy to the museum, and one to Lena Whitaker, with a note that simply read, "He didn't imagine it. He didn't deserve silence, and neither do you." By fall, Silver Pines had taken on a new life. Kids laughed in the courtyard. Strangers became friends over burnt coffee and local maps. People came not just to sleep, but to reflect. It wasn't just a motel. It was a memory house, a soft landing, a place where stories got a second breath. Amelia sat on the porch one chilly October morning, wrapped in the same shawl her mother used to wear. The wind rustled the trees behind the office. Somewhere, a wind chime rang gentle, like a bell calling souls to rest. Grace, the new desk assistant she hired part-time, came out with a note in her hand. "You've got mail," she smiled. "Another letter?" This one was short. "I was the kid in room 7. My mom said you'd never reopen. I'm glad she was wrong. Thank you for remembering us." Amelia smiled. She looked out across the gravel lot, where the wind had swept clean a patch of earth that once felt forgotten. Now it felt sacred. Because sometimes healing doesn't come in waves. It comes in rooms. Rooms that were never checked out, because someone was always waiting to be let back in. Autumn deepened its hold on Cedar Junction. The leaves turned copper and gold, spinning like whispered prayers across the old parking lot of the Silver Pines Motel. And inside room 9, the air no longer felt haunted. It felt held. One afternoon, while clearing out a locked supply closet behind the old laundry room, Amelia found something unexpected. A rusted tin cash box hidden beneath a pile of bleach-stained linens. It wasn't locked. Inside were dozens of old Polaroids, faces of guests long gone, kids holding lollipops in front of vending machines, couples leaning on the hood of their cars, her father behind the counter, smiling faintly, her mother pouring coffee in the background. But there was one photo that made her stop breathing. It was Daniel Whitaker, standing outside room 9, smiling, holding a newspaper dated October 2nd, 1997, 2 days before he disappeared. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, her father had written, "He didn't deserve what happened, but I didn't know how to stop it." Amelia sat down on the dusty tile floor and cried, not just for Daniel, but for her father, for the man who had tried to balance between silence and survival, who made a coward's choice and carried it like a curse. She had spent months angry at him. Now she just felt sad. Not everything broken was evil. Sometimes it was just human. That night, she walked to room 9 with the photo in her coat pocket. She lit a single candle, placed the photo on the nightstand, and whispered, "You were real. You mattered. You're remembered by someone who was never meant to forget you." Then she did something she hadn't done since she first opened the door to that room. She sat, not to dig, not to discover, just to be there, to let her presence speak what words couldn't, to keep company with the truth. The next morning, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a note and a single key, not to a room, but to a safety deposit box. "Your father left this for you. I didn't know when or if I'd ever give it to you, but after everything you've done, it's time. Uncle Jim." Amelia drove 3 towns over that afternoon to the bank. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the box. Inside a leather-bound journal and a yellowed envelope marked, "If she ever comes back." She opened the envelope first. It was a letter from her father. "Amelia, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're here, then you came home. I know you must hate me for the secrets. For room 9, for the man I didn't save, I hated me too, but I need you to know I tried. Not enough. Maybe. But I tried. I kept that room locked not to bury him, but to protect you. I thought if I hid it deep enough, the guilt would die with me. But you were always braver than me. If you're still there, then maybe this place can become something beautiful again. Something honest. Something better than I ever gave you." She sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, letter against her chest, the wind pressing through the open window. That evening, Amelia gathered her team 2 part-timers, a retired schoolteacher who ran the coffee bar, and Grace, the 19-year-old desk assistant with a heart too big for her body. She told them about the letter, about the photos, about the plan she had been holding back. "I want to turn room 9 into a listening room, not just a memorial, a place where people can come and tell their truth anonymously or not. We'll record it, archive it, let their voices live." Because Daniel was silenced, and so were so many others. They all said yes. Within weeks, Room 9 had a new addition, a vintage tape recorder with a small sign beside it. "This is a safe space. Tell your truth. We'll carry it with you." People came. A woman who had lost her brother to a corrupt legal system. A man who had survived a cult and never spoken about it. A teen who just wanted to say he existed. Amelia never published these recordings. She just kept them. Like you keep ashes, like you keep vows. But one day, a man came who changed everything. Mid-50s, quiet, kind eyes. He asked to sit in room 9 for a bit. An hour later, he left a note in the guest book. "My father was the man who made the call to silence Daniel. I've carried that shame all my life. I came here to apologize, not because it undoes anything, but because silence must end somewhere." He didn't leave a name. He didn't need to. That night, Amelia stood alone beneath the motel sign. The bulbs were new, glowing steady in the dark. She thought of her father, of Daniel, of Lena, of every story told in that room since she reopened the door, and she smiled, because she wasn't a motel owner anymore. She was a keeper of stories, and in a world too busy to listen, she had made space for voices the world tried to forget. The first snow came quietly. A soft dusting that blanketed the roof of Silver Pines Motel, settling over its crooked signs and aging wood like a promise. The kind of snow that didn't scream winter, but whispered, "You made it." Inside, Amelia lit the old fireplace in the lobby. It had taken weeks to get it working again. There was a time she would have considered it just decoration. Now, it felt necessary. Flames cracked gently behind the grate as she poured hot cocoa for the guests sitting by the window, a retired couple from Michigan, and a woman in her 30s traveling alone. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Some places invite conversation, others hold space. Silver Pines had become the latter. Room 9 had been officially renamed. Not erased, not sanitized, just honored. The sign beside the door now read, "The listening room where truth rests, where silence ends." Once a week, Amelia sat inside, surrounded by the recordings people had left behind. Not to edit them, not to curate, just to witness. She called it her sacred hour. On the first anniversary of Daniel Whitaker's rediscovery, something extraordinary happened. Lena returned. She didn't say much when she stepped out of the cab, just walked slowly up the path, scarf tight around her neck, a small tin in her hands. Amelia met her at the porch. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said gently. Lena offered a quiet smile. "I wasn't sure either." They sat together by the fire. Amelia poured her tea. Lena took a breath that seemed to stretch across decades. "I kept this," she said, opening the tin. His things, notes he wrote, things I couldn't throw away, things no one wanted to believe. She handed over a folded letter. "I left this for my son, but he never came back after the funeral. I think It's meant for someone else now." Amelia unfolded it slowly. Daniel's handwriting was strong, firm. "If you're reading this, it means my voice found its way to you. I don't know your name, but I know your heart, because only someone with an open heart would have stayed long enough to hear me. Thank you. Thank you for letting me matter again." Amelia blinked, and tears fell before she could stop them. Lena reached across and held her hand. Later that night, Amelia stood in front of room 9, no longer afraid, no longer unsure. She pinned Daniel's final letter to the bulletin board beside the guest book. Above it, she added a new placard. "You are not forgotten, and you never will be." In the weeks that followed, people kept coming. Not in droves, not for spectacle, but because they needed to. Silver Pines became a place whispered about in hospital waiting rooms, in hushed conversations between survivors, in therapy sessions, in anonymous forums online. The message was always the same. If you need to speak, there's a room for you. Someone will listen. It didn't matter that it was a motel. It didn't matter that it used to be falling apart. What mattered was the sacredness of what it had become. One afternoon in early spring, Amelia received a package. No return address. Inside was a book bound in soft leather, thick with pages. On the first page, the stories we weren't allowed to tell. It was filled with transcribed recordings from room 9, not by name, not by force, but by consent. Grace had started collecting them, with the guests' permission, typing them out, archiving them in a safe place. Amelia held the book to her chest and whispered, "You did it, Daniel." The motel was never going to be perfect. The sign still flickered in the rain. The vending machine in the corner still jammed sometimes. The rooms smelled faintly of old pine and new paint. But to the people who came, it was holy ground, because somewhere along the way, Silver Pines stopped being a building. It became a heartbeat. And Amelia, she became its keeper. One day, a little girl and her mother checked in, room 4. The girl wandered over to the office fireplace, where the guest book now sat open beside a jar of crayons. She picked up a green one and began to draw. Later, after they checked out, Amelia found the picture still tucked inside the pages. A square building, a glowing door, a stick figure with long hair and a smile, above it, in crayon handwriting. "This place makes quiet feel like it's okay." Amelia placed it inside the same tin her father once used to hide his secrets. Now it held light. In her journal that night, she wrote, "My father never taught me how to fix things, but he left me the thing that mattered more, a door to open, and the courage to walk through it." As the sun set over the hills, casting long golden shadows across the gravel parking lot, a breeze swept through the motel courtyard. It stirred the wind chimes, rustled the pages of the guest book, and passed gently beneath the door of room 9. And for a moment, it sounded like a sigh of peace. Sometimes, the most sacred places aren't churches or monuments. They're broken down motels on forgotten highways. Silver Pines was never supposed to be holy. It was just bricks, dust, and secrets. But it became sacred the moment someone listened. The moment a daughter chose to stop running. The moment she opened a door that had been locked in silence. The moment she chose truth over comfort. Because silence doesn't protect us, it isolates us. And truth, it doesn't heal everything. But it starts the healing. Amelia didn't set out to become a keeper of voices. She simply followed a whisper that said, "Don't let him be forgotten." And in doing so, she reminded all of us, even the quietest stories matter. Even the closed doors deserve to be opened. And even in a place the world left behind, someone is always waiting to be heard. The end? Up next, 2 more unforgettable, true story-inspired films. Tap to continue and hit subscribe if you believe every voice deserves to be heard.